Gina Virginia Casella and the Dragon Dreams Soul Tribe Collective, pleased to introduce Missy Hill. Missy is a paranormal historian, psychic, grid reader, and galactic earth shaman. She has an innate ability to go on the land and immediately know the history of it, along with the location of the grid lines that run through it, which Missy has the ability to restore. Her footage has been used on the Travel Channel and History Channel. She is a speaker and has conducted many UFO tours, divine travels, legendary world that partner with Royal Caribbean and Princess. Missy is a regular guest on the Typical Skeptic podcast. Missy wants you to know that dreams are more than dreams. They are often memories of other timeline identities and soul aspects, some real and some fabricated in a controlled landscape. Gina Virginia Casella and the Dragon Dreams Soul Tribe Collective, thank you, Missy, for sharing your story medicine and for courageously dreaming with us. Thank you for being a dragon medicine bearer and for helping us to create safer spaces to give and receive our story medicine. One of the best ways to heal is with the earth, and that's exactly what we do with each other. Gina Virginia Casella and the Dragon Dreams Soul Tribe Collective, pleased to welcome Missy Hill.
Hello, everybody. What an amazing day this has been. And thank you, Gina, for that lovely intro. I can't believe where we are in time here, but there's been so much synchronicity today that I just want to share this with you, this eagle in flight, because we have a journey that we're going to go on. And I also want to share this with you, the globe. Now, whether you believe we're on a flat earth or a pancake or a round earth or any of that, it doesn't matter. We're getting the bird's eye view today of my experience. I want to share with you so that it anchors into your reality as a somatic experience, because I was thinking, how am I going to get these things across to everyone in just 35 minutes? So I'd like us to expand on this whole pine tree forest, which is actually what we're going to do right now. And this is synchronistic in itself, because my experience was in the pine tree forest. So what I'd like you to do first is take some deep breaths and begin by gazing at the candle that you lit this morning, and think of your original intention when you lit this candle. Place your hands in awareness in the center of your heart space, your chest, and feel your sit bones supported beneath you and your feet resting firmly on the floor. Become aware of the room and your surroundings in the room. Breathe in the light, breathe out the love. Gently draw that flame that you're visualizing into your third eye, activating your pineal gland. And see a clear frequency from the blue sky above you. I hope you have a blue sky where you are, and see this descending down to meet you above the top of your head in your awareness, and meet this light symbol code of the flame within your third eye. As these energies connect, a spark is created. Send this spark down your body through your central vertical channel all the way into the core of the earth, where it gathers infra-pink frequencies. Feel that. That's the crystalline grid deep in the earth, inner earth caverns, plasma codes. Draw this energy back up through your central vertical channel and let it rest in your rib cage, and watch it as it builds into charge and becomes a luminous light green orb that is about the size of a grapefruit. This is a plasma body orb. This is going to be different than an astral projection. I know that we heard about the plasma orb coming out of the chest before. That is truly where this comes from, but all tools can be used for positive. So this orb, within this orb, you see a small version of yourself in the plasma form. It's a holographic version of you. Project this orb outward from your heart through your front door as we are traveling together as a group, yet each of us remains individually protected. Move beyond time and space and find yourself flying over the North Georgia mountains. It's a wooded area, so here's that pine tree forest. Just south of those mountains, you notice a wooded area beside a peaceful lake, and your plasma orb slowly descends and lands in a cozy cabin in the woods. Inside the cabin is a comfortable couch or bench. The orb expands until it becomes the size of your physical body. Breathe deeply into that holographic plasma form, filling it with love and awareness. As you sit comfortably, you notice an old map of the United States spread out before you. Your attention is drawn to the Four Corners region. Immerse yourself in the map as though you are physically there, sensing the ancient lands of the Navajo Nation and many indigenous peoples connected to this region. In one hand, you hold a warm cup of your favorite tea, and in the other, a beautiful quartz crystal pendulum that refracts rainbow light. The pendulum begins to move. It swings forward and back and side to side. It circles, makes spirals, going clockwise and counterclockwise. Its movement becomes more subtle until it vibrates gently, and then it comes to a complete stop. And you feel yourself becoming one with the crystal and one with the map, and yet you're the observer. So you're observing yourself in your plasma body orb as well as your physical body self that you are. A message arrives from spirit. This is your own inner guidance. So receive that message now. Take a deep breath, inhale, breathe out. My message that day was, you are being called to go over the road and travel and do grid work. As you sit with this guidance, your power animal appears. It may be a cat or dog or another sacred companion. In that time, it was my sweet, beloved cat, Soda, who you'll meet in just a little bit. Your animal brushes gently against your leg, grounding and reassuring you. You rise and step outside of the cabin. Nearby stands a man wearing a falconer's glove with a magnificent falcon perched upon his wrist. He gives a signal and the bird launches into flight. You experience yourself as the falconer, directing the bird just as you direct the course of your life. Then your perspective shifts and you become the bird. You feel its talons gripping into the glove. You feel the excitement of taking flight, of soaring through the air, of returning for nourishment and seeing the world from above. Through the bird's eyes, you observe the energetic grid lines of the land below, and you recognize their connection to the map of the United States. and the patterns that you have been shown. After watching and learning and experience, you return back to the cabin where time does not exist here. You sit once again on the couch, taking a deep breath, allowing your plasma body to gently contract in that light green orb, now infused with aurora-like rainbow colors and codes of light and wisdom and messages you have received. This orb it's lifted effortlessly into the air and carries you back across time and space, and you return to where your physical body is seated. Bring the orb gently back into your heart center, placing your hands on your chest maybe. Allow its light and wisdom and frequencies to integrate through your entire being. Take some deep breaths and feel your sit bones on the floor. Become aware of your surroundings. Feel your feet on the floor. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. And with that, I'm going to explain this first slide. This first slide was, most of you have heard my story that I went as an over-the-road truck driver. I went to truck driving school in 2000, and we went over the road as a truck driver, both of us, in 2001. And we worked for U.S. Express, hence the red truck. And we used to listen to Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell and George Norrie to keep us awake in the middle of the night. And that's the reason for Been Everywhere, Coast to Coast. Like the Willie Nelson song says, I've been everywhere. And Soda is directing with the map because Soda is going to be a big part of the book. So with that, Gina, let's go ahead and show the next slide. This is my beloved Soda, who came to us in 2000 her birthday was May 20th. So it would have been like about 6 weeks after that. Let's see the next slide so I can see where we're going, because I forgot to set the timer. So anyway, okay. So we've covered a lot of things today, including we've covered Mars, we've covered some other things. So at the bottom corner here, this is Meteor Crater. Some of you've heard about my talks about Meteor Crater on other shows. And Niagara Falls is in the bottom corner. These are some of the places we went on the road, as well as the Luxor, which is in the front here, and that's Memphis, Elvis's place, which is going to cue me to, as you look at this, what we're looking at here, these photos, some of you are probably saying, what does this have to do with me and why grid work? Well, first of all, we're sentient beings, we're holographic unto ourselves, and we are a living grid of consciousness, as Gina would say, in the biological one that we are. And that creates connections to the grids of the land, as well as to deep space, our ancestors from space, whether you believe it's space, non-space, holographic imagery, how that plays out as far as whether it's a pop-up book, and none of that matters. I look at this whole thing as sort of like a Russian doll. So everything is stacked within itself. So the reason for grid work in this case is because the land is a memory bank that holds timelines holographically. And unfortunately, what seems to be held with the most energy is trauma. Just like we were talking about trauma in the body and releasing trauma in the body. It seems that negative energy from wars hold a lot of energy, as well as hauntings in the land. And that shared belief system about a land being haunted or having war codes and everybody focusing on that similar timeline is actually going to keep recreating the same thing over and over again, where there's like a trauma loop within the land, which is called a phantomal. I started to learn this and understand it deeper when we actually went to where that pyramid is that you see, the one at the top above the Luxor that has the pretty sky and it's purple. Memphis has a pyramid. Now that's not where Graceland, Elvis's place is. I couldn't find a picture of that, but it's something to research. If anybody's ever been to Graceland, when we went to see Elvis's grave, I wondered why people felt his ghost. I said, because he's not here. But the awareness came to me that people wanted to see his ghost, so they're creating what's called a tulpa or egregore, which is holding that memory in place. The same type of thing has also happened when we went to another place that I've talked about on radio shows. On Michael Koff's show, I talked about the Battle of Bull Run, which is when I went to Manassas. So one day, Ron and I actually happened to be driving our truck and wanting some coffee and wanting to take a walk. And in those days, we used to stop a lot of times at Barnes and Noble to, walk around, look at books, as well as grab a coffee. And we noticed it was a beautiful area. So we decided, why not take a hike behind the Barnes and Noble? We didn't know where we were. We had no idea that we were actually in Manassas National Park. And when we took the walk, and I started to feel and sense and see soldiers walking around in this circle, and I said, oh my God, I feel like there's a mass grave right here. Well, it turns out when we go back in the Barnes and Noble, and my husband Ron opens to this book, he turned to the very page where this certain battle that we were looking at happened. And doing research later on, I realized that there's people that will get pictures of things like ghost ships or soldiers walking across a fence, like the Battle of Gettysburg. And you have to wonder, why is this? And it seems that the trauma of negativity, it holds a quick burst of energy. Okay, so which means somebody can use negative energy as fuel very quickly, and that's the reason for the higher ups that actually want to do what they do to children and needing that negative energy, because it's a quick fuel. But if somebody wants a slow burn that's consistent and for a long period of over time, the positive emotion is going to give you fuel in the long run. But people don't know this, and we, as a human race, focus on a lot of things, which I like to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. It seems like the ugly is what sells, like when you're on, watching things on, social media, the news, it's always the most traumatic thing that gets the ratings, right? I mean, that's starting to change, but people still like a good story, and some of that is why. So when I started learning about topals and egregores, another thing I realized later on when I was doing my Biltmore Village mystery tour, this was later, this is after we came off the road. We were on the road for 3 years. I've had a lot of experiences being on the road, going to all kinds of places, Niagara Falls, which was absolutely gorgeous, has its own type of energy. Going out west to the Great Salt Lake and standing on the Salt Lake and feeling like, oh my God, there's mummies that are buried here, Egyptian artifacts and things like that. Going to Colorado and being on Loveland Pass at 10,000 feet when it's snowing. Every one of these experiences, they all had different energy signatures, and I would feel different emotions in different places, and I had to start going within myself and figuring out why. And another thing that comes up later, storms, the different storms and how they're created. We know about HARP and things like that, but how when the terrain of a place is changed all of a sudden from some kind of storm, it can wipe out the previous storyline that was held in the land, which is like a reset. So even when you go to a place like the Grand Canyon, you can feel by looking at the Grand Canyon that something happened instantly over time, just by the way the rocks are on their side. I mean, there's a lot of places like this. I remember in southern Arizona, there was a place off of I-10 somewhere, and it just looked like all these rocks were like piled on top of each other. Like if you were a huge giant being and you decided you were playing with rocks and you just threw them and they just landed however they did. I know I've seen pictures of places in Aruba that have the same type of look, and you have to wonder why all over the earth, why are there's different places that have similar terrain from the way the cataclysms were. So I learned something recently to go forward in time when Hurricane Helene went through. Because I used to do something called the Biltmore Village Mystery Tour, which was in the Biltmore Village, which is not on Biltmore Estate land, which is, George Vanderbilt, if you know anything about George Vanderbilt. This was the land that his lawyer, Samuel Reed, actually had owned, the 22 acres that was sold back to George Vanderbilt. Well, Western North Carolina had a hurricane that came in September of 2024, Hurricane Helene, that should have not actually been directed to a place like Western North Carolina. A hurricane of that magnitude should not happen unless it was brought there by something other than Mother Nature, which I feel it was. But I'm using this as an example of how instantly I'm sharing certain storylines of history and ghostly activity of what was in the land from 2024. It would have been 108 years prior, about a previous hurricane storm that went through, that the Catawba River and the French Broad River and the Swananoa River, how all those flooded and it changed the terrain then. This happens multiple times and it has happened again. So that was another change in the terrain. Let's just go with the next slide to see what we are looking at, Gina. Next slide. Oh, okay. This is just something fun here. This is Art Bell's alien who did some grid work. He actually lived in Pahrump, Nevada, went to Asheville, North Carolina, and went back to Las Vegas, Nevada. Okay. We may come back to him. Let's see where we are in time, because we have a lot of things there's a lot of things I want to cover. So let's go to the next slide and see what we're looking at here. Okay, this is the Biltmore Estate. So this is perfect. I was just talking about the Biltmore. This is during their Festival of Flowers, their beautiful rhododendrons on their trail that goes down to a lake, which is kind of behind the where the greenhouses are and things. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. I just wanted to share some beauty. And here's on the Blue Ridge Parkway. So let's leave this up for a moment and take this in as part of our pine tree forest and part of our grid work. One thing I want to share about grid work is you being a living grid unto yourself, is your own grids of your property line are important. So grid work can be great or small. It doesn't have to be what I did or what my cat Soda did. My cat Soda actually went to 47 out of 48 states. The only state she did not get to was Vermont, okay? Now, Ron and I have both been to Vermont before, and interestingly enough, Ron and I, now separately, he went to Hawaii as a teenager, and so did I. The only island I didn't get to was Kauai. I'm pretty sure the same with him, and we've never been to Alaska. So that's something we want to do. Okay, let's go to the next slide, because I'm hoping this is Arthur. Oh, okay, this is Puerto Rico. Let's go one slide up, and then we're going to go back to this. Okay, this is Ireland. This is me. Yeah, go to this one. Oh, there's Arthur. Meet him. Go back a slide, please. Okay, this is Mount Mitchell, the highest peak east of the Mississippi River, standing at 6,684 feet. Okay, go back to a next slide, please. One more slide. Okay, this is one ahead. That's it. This is in Puerto Rico, La Garita del Diablo. This is called the Devil's Watchtower. This is going to be part of our next journey. I'm going to put you through another journey here because this is the best way to explain the grid work, is for you to have the experience. So this is going to be one of the points that we're actually going to fly to, but we're going to go back a slide, I think. No, we're going to go back one more. No, sorry about that. We're going to go forward. We're going to go forward. One more. Right there. Okay. Right there. That's it. Okay. So you're going to experience this journey, and then I think we'll have some time for some questions, because Mount Mitchell, what came to me is in 2012 2012 was an important year, not just because of the Mayan calendar, but because I was invited to an event that a friend of mine actually had brought to Hendersonville, North Carolina, called Star Knowledge. And that was actually the first time I met Laura Eisenhower. Now, when I started working on gridding that project with my friend, I realized, and the ladies that were involved in this, I realized that Mount Mitchell was holding all timeline memories of polarization, of war codes, even though specifically there wasn't necessarily a war there. It was something to do with the magnetics, the crystalline structure, it being the continental divide, and it also being the highest point east of the Rockies and east of the Mississippi. I was feeling the Cherokee removal. I was feeling the Civil War, race wars, wars between masculine and feminine. And I want you to know that I'm doing this next journey with you through the perspective of coming from America and being on American soil and land grid. So everybody's going to have their own perspective of this, depending on where you are on the earth when you go remote view something. However, clearing war codes, no matter what country or city, city, country, state, whatever, this just all needs a major clearing, okay? Because all of us want peace and don't want to be having these issues, especially if we're supposed to be going out into space. We have to get it right here and get along with everyone here. So with that, let's take another journey here, the same as before, where you're gazing at your candle and you're just taking deep breaths and you just listen to my voice and I just read you this story here. So take some deep breaths and breathe in the light and out the love, and feel yourself totally in the present moment, and bring awareness to your entire body. Now, as you focus on the candle, again, bring it through your pineal code. This is called pineal code induction, where you're bringing this flame in, then send it down, and you're bringing the blue sky down, these blue frequencies. I call the fire and ice frequencies, the ice and the fire from down below. And visualize this spark igniting and forming a luminous green orb of plasma inside your chest, and step into this ship this time. You don't have to go all the way up and down because you've done that. That's in time and space already. And we're going to travel to Mount Mitchell. This is Mount Mitchell, this picture that you're looking at. So you can actually project through the screen to Mount Mitchell and be there, which is the tallest point east of the Mississippi. Your plasma ship lands and you find yourself at the summit, looking out at all the directions. You see vast mountain ranges, including Table Rock and Hawksbill in the Linville Gorge, which is home of the mysterious Brown Mountain Lights. As you take in the landscape, your awareness begins to turn inward. You enter a state of remote viewing. The mountain reveals its continental divide and magnetic field structure within its energetic body. It has been holding timelines of conflict, degradation, division, and polarization. You witness memories of civil wars, civil rights wars and struggles, divisions of race, color and class, and the imbalance between divine masculine energies and divine feminine energies. The mountain shows you a time before North Carolina and South Carolina were divided, before borders and before names and before ownership and before history, a time when the land was simply the land. And before that, something even older. You see peace. Peace is possible. You see it. You feel it in every fiber of your being. You watch as the light and the darkness dissolve into each other. Opposites become complements and polarities start to soften. With each breath, you release the trauma held within your body and witness the land releasing these ancient memories as well. Breathe in the light and breathe out the love. Your awareness expands. You see the Mountains to Sea Trail. It's actually a hiking trail that you can do off the Blue Ridge Parkway. You see this Mountains to Sea Trail. You see the Appalachian Trail. You see all this stretching eastward towards the Atlantic Ocean. And you're following this pathway. You follow this pathway as if you are a giant and you could walk it, and you follow it to Charleston, South Carolina. That's where I am now. I'm actually south of Charleston, South Carolina, in a small town called Edisto. You perceive Charleston as a city layered with history, memory, and lingering echoes of the past. Now, it's interesting that alcohol was brought up. I saw a whole big piece to do with the spirit of Al Ghul, connected to algorithms, connected to reverse rainbow codes, with all this transhumanistic and transgender agendas that had been promoted and things like that. And the Al Ghul and the algorithm in Charleston, because of the fact that the first liquor store in the United States, as well as speakeasies, were in Charleston. So you also observe the symbolic structures and energetic patterns and encoded narratives that are woven deeply into this southern landscape, along with all the religious overtones, all this patriarchal religion. You witness histories connected with commerce, conflict, and transformation. Then your awareness moves to Fort Sumter, where the opening shots of the American Civil War were fired on April 12th at 4:30 a.m. in 1861. You remain a compassionate witness, and your journey continues. You are now transported to San Cristobal. Okay, go up a slide. Okay. One more? Okay, just leave it there. That's great. You are transported to Fort San Cristobal in San Juan, Puerto Rico, arriving at La Garita del Diablo, the Devil's Watchtower. Standing at the edge of the sea, you perceive a great vortex-like gateway where the world's timelines and possibilities seem to converge. 5 iguanas bask in the sunlight, and together they begin speaking to you as a collective intelligence. You question what you are being shown and remain open to understanding. Images of ancient civilizations and genetic experimentation, creation myths and archetypal stories of divine feminine and divine masculine emerge. You observe narratives to do with Inanna, Enki, and Enlil. The iguanas actually told me that their name was was Inanna. You watch without judgment. You witness differing approaches to creation, power, compassion, and stewardship. You are shown patterns of wounded feminine energy, scorned woman programs, and unresolved emotional imprints carried through generations. Then, for a brief moment, you glimpse the volcanic goddess Pele in Hawaii, embodying both destruction and creation. Your awareness moves back further, and you are shown visions of pre-Atlantis and pre-Lemuria, and the Bermuda Triangle appears as a vast plasma womb gate connecting worlds before distortions emerge. You witnessed a time when energetics currents flowed harmoniously and naturally, and then you observed how distortions gradually formed and how the gateway became altered over time. Then your journey continues to Key West. This is the water in Key West when we went on the Margaritaville cruise. We were in Key West, Florida, near the East Fort Martello Museum, which is at the edge of the peninsula, which houses Robert, the haunted doll, the doll of Robert Eugene Otto. But Robert was more than a haunted doll for me. For me, he was holographic in nature, reflecting back to me my own memories, my own awarenesses, things to do with the collective, to do with wars from the before the rise of the Industrial Revolution, World War I, World War II, things like that. And being at the East Fort Martello Museum, I also felt a time of peace where the energy and the waters of Stargate 3, the Bermuda Triangle, that feminine womb vortex that had been demonized, been called the Devil's Triangle, is being recoded and dissolving into Siesta Key, Sarasota, Florida's Stargate 2, that was dark flowering, seeing them dissolving into each other, where they both meld and it just becomes for the positive, for the highest timeline possible. Then the journey continues, and I'm aware of across the pond, for those of you across the pond, and feeling the whole Atlantic Ocean, and feeling the energies of the UK, and feeling the energies of Avalon, and the rise of King Arthur and Guinevere, as far as divine masculine feminine ruling together, that are possibly in stasis, which are those dragon lines that we heard about earlier today, that they were actually could be dragons themselves that were frozen in time, that became rocks. This goes back to seeing what were these, those Easter Island heads, those Moai heads, all these things, that are all over. So you perceive the meeting of the oceans, of the currents, of the timelines, of the energetic pathways, and you become aware of the Michael Mary lines and King Arthur, Atlantis, memories, myths, histories. Timelines begin to dissolve into each other. Everything merges, everything connects. Breathe in the light and out the love. Now your awareness is carried back even further. You enter Hyperborean timelines. Remote viewing takes you across ice-covered regions of northern Norway, Iceland, Greenland, and the North Pole. You observe ancient frozen landscapes and forgotten histories. You perceive shifts in planetary spin, magnetic structures, and energetic currents. You gather information regarding ancient artifacts, lost weather technologies, weather modification systems, and mysterious craft from distant ages. And that goes into the Azores, down to Antarctica, all these places. As you emerge, a realization emerges. Every piece of the puzzle connects. Every timeline interweaves. Every story influences the whole story. Medicine for a story species. As your own puzzle piece matters as well. You are gently returned back to Mount Mitchell. The mountains stretch endlessly around you, and you take your final look across the horizon, and then you contract your awareness back into the light green plasma orb, now glowing with an aurora-like rainbow colors and carrying the wisdom and insights and messages gathered throughout the journey. Your orb lifts into the sky and carries you back across all the distance timelines, and then you return to your sacred space. Return to the room where your body is resting, doing this meditation. Feel yourself on the couch. Bring the orb back into your heart center and allow it to integrate its wisdom throughout your entire being. When you take your deep breaths and feel your body and your feet, and you realize that your grid, your corner of the world, your personal healing affect the greater whole. It's the butterfly effect. Everything is connected. When you are ready, gently open your eyes with renewed awareness, clarity, and presence. So this is the keys. Go back a slide, Gina, please. This is Arthur. That's at one of the summits at Mount Mitchell. Go back further. That's me at Mount Mitchell. That's where we took off from. Go back further. I want to show them, look. Okay, that's me in Ireland. So that's across the pond. We didn't get to talk about that. Go back again. This is Lagarita del Diablo. This is where the iguanas were sunning themselves. And this is where I heard, and I'm questioning, why are Anunnaki goddesses talking to me? This is kind of weird, you know, because I wasn't sure what I thought of, you know, the Anunnaki. And I was, you know, had read Zechariah Sitchin and all that. So let's go forward our slides and see what we have left to show them. This is my psionic kitty behind me. I chose this because I'm very connected with cats. Okay, this is Robert the doll. This is at the East Fort Martello Museum that I was showing you at the point of the keys that dissolves into each other. This is him. This is the little Robert. And go up another slide. And now we're back to this again. So yeah, actually, I can't believe it. I did it in 35 minutes. So I can actually start taking questions now. That'd be good because I condensed this so much. I was so worried about it.
You did a phenomenal job. You even have 3.5 minutes left over. So
yeah, I figured we'll just use it for the Q&A.
Absolutely. If anybody
wants to actually hear all my stories, they're everywhere. They're on Typical Skeptic Podcast. They're on your show. They're on Julia Anchorhaven's channel. They're on Slavka's channel. They're going to be on, you know, there's some of them are on my channel. They're just spread out everywhere. So, you know, you can go back and just listen to, yeah.
Yes, and you know, Missy's got lots of books coming out too, because it's time to start transforming all of those transcripts. Even today, getting the transcript, you know, and transforming it into a book. I wrote lots of notes as per usual. If anybody has any questions for Missy, let us know. I thought the Pine Tree Forest link was really cool. And then I like how you did the Mount Mitchell guided journey as well. That was a cool way to do a presentation. When you talked about Phantom Land, that really struck me as interesting because, you know, people, for example, who have an arm or a leg amputated experience phantom pain because
right.
like, well, how can you possibly feel pain if your arm is no longer there? But
right.
the land
exactly.
remembers, even though the land isn't there, the rest of my body remembers that there's a part that's not there. And so I just... wow, I was very wowed by that. I never made that connection before. And when it comes to healing the earth, healing the land, people in real life who have phantom pain, what they do is they'll take a mirror and put their arm or their leg that they do have, so it looks like they have two arms. It looks like they have two legs. And through this illusion, they actually find healing because they can see it. And it made me think about your grid work and all that you do, because you can't see the grid. Like, you just get all the spidey senses going, information coming to you. So I thought that was really cool. And then when you were talking about egregores and how the egregore is holding the memory in place. Can you talk a little about egregores a bit more? Because there's so much information out there about egregores.
You can call it.
Tell us about that.
You can call it a tulpa or an egregore. So when I went to, like I said, the first time I really became aware of it is going to Elvis's grave in Graceland, Tennessee. Like that song by Paul Simon, I'm going to Graceland, 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 Tennessee. I mean, because people expect his ghost to be there. So I think that it's their thoughts that actually create his ghost, because if he's moved on, and I'm not saying that his ghost to a degree, or there's not some memory in place where he is there, because he also had a big love for that property, but human emotion is holding that in place. It's sort of like the timeline that we recently experienced with this crazy pandemic. I mean, I was surprised when I went to the pool the other day to hear teenagers talking about that memory, and the power of something like that, or like 9/11 and how that creates things in the land grid. So anything that's a trauma, death, death is a trauma, because I feel like we should be like Star Trek. We should just be able to will ourselves to leave, not to have to see the ugly and the disease patterns and all these things to escape here, and have that be like traumatic. I can tell you, when my mother passed away, to have to look at her unalive was very traumatic. And then for a while, you can almost not see the memory of when the person was alive. It takes a while to actually recode that and say, I need to remember, and I choose to remember when this person was young and healthy. And see, the ones that control, that are obsessed with a death culture, have written things for us to, I don't know if this is answering your question, but this is all to do with the phantoms and the dark spaces, because it's all to do with the dark, the stuff that we are innately afraid of. And I think that's because we are subconscious. I don't feel we should be subconscious. I feel everything should be conscious, but we bury all the stuff like in our body. It's like in us. The body remembers everything. I think we've heard that a few times today. Even if we don't hear, the body remembers, right? So the body and the body, the energy field, like if somebody's missing their leg, it's not even their brain, it's their energy field. The energy field remembers that limb was there. The energy of the energy field of the earth remembers that trauma of those soldiers battling it out and their bloodshed on the land. The earth is remembering that holographically. And that is, even still, if something is built over it and it's cleared, it becomes a phantomal, because a phantomal is something that plays over again, like a skip in a record. Like if you play a record around and around, it skips and goes back, like it doesn't progress forward. That's kind of what's happening on some of these land grids if they don't get cleared, and a story with more energy takes their place. So by doing story medicine, we're rewriting our story so we can choose what story we focus on holographically, so we can remove that skip in the record, if you will. We don't need to have that skip, or if we want to skip in the record, maybe we want the skip to be in a different place. Maybe we don't want the skip to be where it's been. Maybe it need, like with what happened with Helene, there was a skip in the record, but fortunately or unfortunately, that skip has changed. For me, I can't do the Biltmore Village Mystery Tour in the way, not only because half those businesses were closed, some of them are never coming back, and part of the town never reopened because of what happened with the Swananoa River. Those stories became obsolete, and I picked it up before it happened. I started talking obsessively about hurricanes, and I would always sing the song by Led Zeppelin that goes like this: if it keeps on raining, the levee's gonna break. If it keeps on raining, the levee's gonna break. Because the Biltmore Village, even on a day that you got too much rain, it may flood the next day the way it's built, because it was low down. And there was people that talked about coming that were in a hurricane, like these people that lost their house in a hurricane in Texas. And the guy that owns the tour, Joshua, lived in Puerto Rico at the time, and he was lucky to leave Puerto Rico, where you saw in San Juan there. He actually lived on the other side of the coast that I went to a year later from when I went to that tour that we did with him, which was called Boca Raton. When we hung out with him the first time, it was one side of the island. Next time it was Boca Raton, which is the west side of the island. So yeah, he was directed to leave right before Hurricane Maria went through. And Hurricane Maria, it took a long time for them to get get back online with their power and with all that stuff. So yeah, I think a lot of these stories of like to do with weather changes is what actually is something that can actually clear a pattern. So even though that was a traumatic thing with Helene, it cleared an old pattern, but it brought a new one. And it was to the point, it actually changed the terrain of the land and how the rivers flow. The rivers are flowing different. At one time, I heard that something happened with the New Madrid Fault. There was some earthquake that actually caused the Mississippi River to flow backwards. And they say that the French Broad River is like one of the oldest rivers, like the Nile River, and it does flow south to north instead of north to south before it goes into like the Tennessee River, which will drop down into the Gulf of America, Mexico. So when one is doing grid work, they're becoming aware of all the energetic systems and how they play out. The waters, how the waters flow on the 3D level first. And, you know, the land, the terrain, you know, how many meters or feet you are above sea level, you know, the mountain ranges, all these things, because you always look at the natural first. It's like when I did paranormal investigations, when people want to know about ghostly activity, I would always rule out first what was happening on a physical level before I would say whether a place was haunted. But what I noticed is that if a place was haunted, it always had something physically going on. I'll give you an example. It would have possibly an issue of mold and mildew. The spirits seem to like moldy, mildewy places. That's one thing. Or another thing could be that there'd be electrical problems in the house. I was just talking about this yesterday with Rob from Typical Skeptic, trying to figure out what is going on in his house, because his apartment is new. It's not old. He doesn't have any mold and mildew, but is there something with the electrical system? Is there smart meters? What's going on? Because when we were over the road as truck drivers, we got off the road. We were never technology buffs because we were always hands-on people. I mean, Ron worked for UPS back then and drove a truck. And I was a licensed massage bodywork therapist, did energy work, you know, personal train, these kinds of things, and never sat in front of a desk or a computer. I can't sit still that long and do that. But so we didn't know much about MP3 players or any of this stuff. So Ron used to like to record coast to coast, get up every hour and record it on cassette tape. This wasn't that long ago. I guess we're just like a little bit behind the times. And he had this DC plug-in thing in the house. And I noticed when we had this DC converter instead of like AC, you know, like alternating current, which is in your wall, this thing actually had plasma orbs about this size that were green that were floating around in our house. And for some reason, having that DC plug-in thing, whatever he was doing with that, was bringing in paranormal activity. I mean, I would see red. I didn't have any digital things in my house. I tried to even have the old, I mean, this wasn't that long ago. What was it? I guess it was maybe it was 2009, 2010, around that time, 2011. Then we got into the MP3 players and all that stuff. But I'm thinking, or maybe it's a little bit before that. I don't know. But seeing like little like red dots of light and different things in the house, like digital things where digital things weren't, like smoke alarm things, like where they have these red lights. I'm like, why am I seeing these red light things in different parts of the house? I think it was all connected to this DC plug-in, because when this DC plug-in, when we took it out of the house, some of that activity was gone. So it's very strange.
Wow, so much information you have to share with us. And it's almost like you took a little glance at my questions here, because you answered and touched on a lot of things that I wrote down. I was going to ask you about the water, changes of the land, natural versus unnatural, like just, you know, the natural rhythms of planet Earth, the river flowing, rocks moving, droughts, floods, that kind of stuff. But then there's unnatural stuff, like you mentioned a giant throwing rocks. It just kind of looked like that, you know. And it's interesting too, because you were discovering Egyptian artifacts not found in Egypt. So it's like, well, how did that get there, right? And you talk about the American map. I'm Canadian, but I get what you're saying. Like the land changes and the lines on the map, we put those lines there. So you can have whatever state you want or country for that matter, but ultimately it's one big Mother Earth Pachamama. But I wanted to ask you about.
I just want to tell you this. I walked into Canada from the New York side on foot. I went to Niagara Falls. We actually went to a casino and ate on foot. We were able to, just cross the border on foot. That was amazing. And did that Maid of the Mist. We loved it.
Yeah, Maid of the Mist. I went on that. That's, if you come to Canada, definitely Niagara Falls in Ontario. Go to Maid of the Mist. Can you tell us a little bit about how do you clear the land? Like, what does it look like, sound like? Like when you're like, okay, this land needs to be cleared, what do you do? Do you have a certain ceremony that you do, certain prayers or crystals that you work with? What does it look like and sound like?
Sometimes it doesn't even happen all at once. Sometimes it happens over time, just same way I do sessions, which means I might not even be guided to do anything but observe it while I'm there and work on it when I leave. Because if I do too much, sometimes it's like this. When I went to the Georgia Guidestones, when I was with these two other women, we couldn't do a clearing. We tried. We were not really allowed to do it, but it was sort of like loosening, like in the Jenga game. If you know anything about Jenga and you pull those sticks out, if you pull everything out at once, it's going to crash down. But if you slowly pull it out, it's like a controlled burn. So I kind of do it that way where I feel it in my body, because if I do it all at once, then it affects me negatively. So sometimes it's just being a grid hunter and getting the story, and then later the clearing happens and I may not even do it. Somebody else may show up and do it. If that makes any sense.
Yes, that does make sense. And I've heard all kinds of beautiful stories where people like yourself go to places and you do your thing, and then there's like elders and whatnot in the community that they're like, what's going on? Somebody's doing something, because all of the sudden they're in communication with ancestors that they haven't heard from in like, decades, or they haven't heard from ever, because it's just like a name that they've heard of. And it's because people like you are doing this work. So people do notice, right? And I was going to ask you.
Let me give you an example, if I have time to give
sure.
an example about Charleston. I knew Charleston was important to clear for what's called Jehovian seals, okay, and trumpets, which will cause a deeper repetition galactically to do with the dark factions. We get into reptilians and Dracos and all these beings that we don't necessarily, that don't play nice here. Fort Sumter is holding something much greater that connects to wars to do with Atlantis, to do with Lemuria. I mean, it's like, because all these things can happen. I mean, it connects in with Montauk. For me to get into how and why that is, it's hard to explain, but I just set the intention. I wanted this grid work to happen. And I was with another practitioner. We tried to make this happen. It didn't fly. None of us could agree. No tickets got sold. I don't know. It just didn't happen. And then it came to me later. I actually saw that on another level we had done the ceremony and it was successful. But then I saw that they're on the 3D level, after going to like where the slave trade market was, and a place called where the Provost Dungeon, where signers of the Declaration of Independence were jailed there. And that's right next to the liquor store. I kind of got that the people that were from there needed to do it. It was the Geechee, the blacks that lived there, that were the slaves, that need to be involved and holding hands with the patriarchal ones that were part of the slave trade. And that didn't happen either. You know what ended up happening? The monks decided to walk through the area. The monks came. The Tibetan monks. I wasn't there. I was down in Florida when it happened. And it wasn't necessarily in Charleston, but it was in Columbia, and Columbia Pictures with the Statue of Liberty and the whole thing like that. The Columbia is right between the high country and the low country. It's the Midlands. So they walked right through there. So I put the intention out that the grid work did need to happen. And a friend of mine said it did happen. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Oh my God. So that's the first step in clearing of the land, that I might see it, but I don't have to be the one that does it. Me just seeing it as the observer is rewriting it, because I'm choosing that a clearing is happening, but that doesn't mean I have to do it. And that's the same with all of us. So what do we
I love
see?
that. I never thought about that before. I really love that, because when we notice something, we feel like we have to take on the onus, and it can seem like a burden. But you're just like, no, you just throw out the intention and somebody else will take care of it. Nature will find its way. And that's the power of the subconscious mind. If anybody has any questions for Missy, put them in the chat. In a couple of minutes, Michael, I'm going to ask you to put one of those questions on the stage. How do you know the difference between when you're sensing, for example, like Civil War energy type vibes versus like male, like slavery type vibes? Like those are those two separate energies for you, or do you just recognize like this place needs healing? Like, can you discern, I guess is my question, and how do you do that?
In the beginning, I didn't know what I was feeling and know the difference. But after doing this for a while and you start doing the research, then you're drawn to places that you know what battles happened, and because I'm a tour guide, so I have to know my history. I can't always remember every single date and all this stuff, but and being a tour guide, you have to combine your experience with history and being an entertainer. So you have to be all. So if I screw up a date or something, like if I don't get the Biltmore Estate, I can't remember, was it made in 1895 or 1896? That doesn't matter, because I'll find some way to cover it up if I screw it up, if I don't get the dates, or I can't remember that it was William Dudley Pelley that was a Nazi that came to Asheville, North Carolina, and he had his thing in the Oteen Bank building where he was printing off Nazi materials and all this kind of stuff. If I don't get all that right, or I get the building wrong, people aren't going to know. But I learned over time through a lot of research. I mean, I've been doing this is over 20 years doing this kind of stuff, 25 years. I don't even know anymore. So in the beginning, I didn't know, but now I can almost look at a map of the United States and I can feel what's going on where. Maybe not 100%, because if I don't know what Indian tribe in a certain place, and sometimes shows help me. Like recently, I just wanted to watch that show Dark Winds because I knew it was Navajo lands, and I wanted to refresh my consciousness with that, because I knew that Rise of the Guardians conference was coming up. And sometimes, even if we don't go to a conference, we're lending our energy and we're actually doing grid work by sort of remoting in, or knowing the people that are going. I mean, knowing some of the practitioners, knowing that Joshua Shapiro, who connected in with the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, and that Bill Holman was there. And I'd like to show my crystal skull, because I had this on when I did the show with Chloe Ariel yesterday. So this is my crystal skull. These hold
Pretty big boy you got there.
This one's a girl. Her name is Esmeralda. I wanted to work with the hugest one because she works with the waters, because she sits in my hot tub, in my jacuzzi tub. She's in my jacuzzi tub. So I figured she has to get out and be grounded on land for a little bit, not just be in the water.
Wow, that's really amazing. There is a question, but I just wanted to comment before I get that question, that what you say resonates with me a lot, because I work with people. I don't work with the land, but people are the land. And my whole life, random people coming up to me and telling me interesting things. And it used to make me feel uncomfortable, but now I like welcome that because I get it, But I bet when the land started talking to you, it was kind of weird too at first, like when you were saying I forget the name of the goddesses, but you're like, what are these like voices coming to me for?
Well, yeah,
So I
one
appreciate you
time it
sharing
was
that.
Tiamat. One time I was picking strawberries. I was in Hot Springs. We were bobtailing on a hiking trail. I had gotten that book by Zachariah Sitchin called The Last Lost Book of Enki. And all of a sudden I'm feeling like I'm Tiamat. I hadn't read any of Ashiana Dean's stuff then. I didn't understand, but I was getting glimpses of like one of these Marvel movies where these planets or whatever they are actually are like demigods. I can't remember. If anybody knows the name of what that movie is, drop it in the chat. But there is a movie where if this demigod comes to life on this planet, it'll kill everybody else. It'll kill them. What does Wizard Whitka say?
That's a question for you. So finish your thought, and then we can get to this question here, unless you want to take it now. But
well, I don't like going. Sometimes when I was down in South Florida last year, we go down there for Ron's family, and what I don't like necessarily, I don't like much going to too many big cities anymore where there's too many people. That's what I don't care about. When I was at the South Florida Fair, I was actually feeling that people were literally the battery that kept the whole matrix thing going, that somehow people's energy was being siphoned and put into a battery pack thing and then distributed through the grid, and it connected with AI. And then they had even this festival thing where they had these sand sculptures, and the whole sand sculpture, the theme was all this AI stuff. So I don't particularly like feeling things like that where my nervous system gets really out of whack. And I don't like heat. I mean, even where I am right now, my husband is in love with this place, but to me, if it doesn't rain here, it affects me negatively. I need a lot of rain and yin energy because I feel like it has to discharge. If it's too much sand and salt water because close to the ocean, it actually needs to discharge because it's not enough soil and dirt and rocks and like freshwater streams that's just me. I need that for myself. So I'm looking forward to being by streams. And my concern with the weather modification and creating these storms, even Western North Carolina, it's changed. They've changed it as far as cities it's getting too built up, and with the storms it's removing the topsoil. The topsoil is being removed, and when the topsoil is removed, I'm noticing it's affecting the heat index. So it's much hotter because that dirt, that real dirt with that moss over and stuff like that, holds in that moisture, and now that's not there anymore.
Absolutely. This reminds me of Sheila's presentation earlier about how we're all connected, because it's these exact things, the little things that are connected to these greater themes. Wow. Well, I can't thank you enough, Missy, for being here today. You did it. Your presentation, the 35-minute mark, woohoo, even had bonus time, so I feel excited for you about that. And really just can't thank you enough. I know it was challenging for you to put this together, and I appreciated helping others to really embrace their own story medicine. If somebody out there is listening to you and they're like, that girl is just like me, the land's talking to me, they know now they're not alone. They have somebody like you that they can connect with. They're not losing their mind. This kind of stuff is real. And especially that piece about the phantom land really spoke to me. So thank you so much, Missy. Going to remove you here from this stage. So, wow, what a phenomenal conference, right? But it's not over yet. And we are doing really, really good for time. So when I planned things, I planned just in case we fell behind a little bit or whatever. So we're doing really good. So now, I'm feeling kind of nervous. I'm going to be playing the 2 mini movies. Okay, we're not going to have a break. We'll just end probably in about the next 15 minutes or so. So you're going to hear both of Laura's songs. Laura's been with us all day here behind the scenes, but I don't see her now. So isn't that how it works? Hopefully she'll join us. but this will be on the replay as well. So the first mini movie is based on a real nightmare that I had. It's called Lushing. And then the next movie is called Project 30, ISIS Unity Consciousness. So I'm just going to play them back to back for what they are. Enjoy them. And I can't wait to connect with you a little bit after and close Sacred Space. All right, here goes movie number 1, Mini Movie Medicine, coming your way.